Okay, that's good. We called off the planes too, so. Yeah, B-1Bs are flying over. We're all going to be paying attention. Good evening, everybody. We had some guys that chickened out and decided to watch this basketball game. I don't understand that. But I want to welcome you guys to our vendor spotlight tonight. We have a very special person with us tonight. We have somebody that is definitely part of the family here at Industrial Cigar Company. And I want to make sure that you guys understand this is an open forum, and we're going to have you guys have the ability to ask questions. This is a rare opportunity for us to really learn. So this evening's guest, George Rico, has the privilege to stand in fields and play in dirt all day long.
That is true.
So before we get into the mud pies that you make, let's do this. Tell us who you are in 90 seconds. Go.
Excellent. Hi guys, good evening. So my name is George Rico. I'm from Gran Habano. I'm essentially one of the owners of Gran Habano. My father and I have had Gran Habano over 25 years, and we manufacture in Honduras. We farm in Nicaragua, Panama, Colombia, and Costa Rica. So those are the countries that most of our fillers and binders and wrappers that you see in our blends, you'll find those tobaccos in our blends. We introduced Gran Habanos now over 21 years ago. This year we're celebrating our 20th anniversary with our 20th anniversary cigar. I hope you guys enjoy that. And I'm very happy to be here. I've been here before, and great family, great event, great venue, and I'm happy to be here. Any questions you guys have tonight, don't be shy. I'll try to answer as best as I can. All right?
Perfect. So as you guys know, this format is really, I'll ask a few questions to hopefully kind of dig up some dirt. I guess dirt's a common theme. But one of the things that has always impressed me as we look at manufacturers that we want to partner with, one of the things that's critical for us is to know where they farm, where their tobacco comes from, all of those little individual details. Well, George is actually a
fourth
generation farmer.
Yes.
Third generation
cigar maker.
So this definitely goes back. So there's a lot of history there. I don't know if you guys had an opportunity to watch our show last night, but there were some things that we got into. We started wandering down a path, and we were talking about how manufacturers go through the fermentation, or you're calling it curing process, to go through that process. And we were asking the question if there were any shortcuts. Talk about what you went down a path talking about how things haven't changed for 200 years and how things have really done the same and how technology's moved along. If you would just let's just talk about, since we have this foundation in dirt, let's just talk about the farming process, the importance of that process, and maybe some things that you do differently at your farms in Honduras and Jalapa.
Sure. So, in our farming process, we really focus on seed selection. That's one of the most important parts, depending on the type of seed that we're trying to grow in our farms. We look at water conservation, especially with some of the climate changes that we found now that are happening, even in Central America, fluctuation in rain, hurricanes that we've encountered in recent years. So that being the case, we do drip farming. We also do more of a crossbreeding between the seeds in order for us to really kind of plant new generations of different variations of our tobacco. We focus mostly on Corojo, Criollo. That's sort of the two, in Habano. So you'll find those in our brands, in our blends. For the most part, it's kind of one of the things that we focus on is maintaining tradition of how we farm, with the idea of always trying to grow very rich ligeros, very important. We really try to make sure that our ligeros are really strong, robust. So we'll farm just ligeros depending on different spacings, as opposed to your traditionals. Wider, depending on the soil. We'll also farm in one plot of land. You'll have up to 2 different types of soils. So we do a lot of different things that help the particular seed that we're growing. So that being
Can I
the
ask
case.
you a question
Yeah.
there? Because I'm learning something. How do you just grow ligero leaf? Because typically you have the plant, Seco Viso Ligero. How do you grow just
So
ligero?
the idea for us to be able to grow ligeros is that we actually space between, usually we'll do between 24 inches to 36 inches, which limits the amount of plants that you farm in a particular field. So you're getting more sun.
Okay.
That doesn't necessarily mean that from one plant you won't get your Visos, your Secos, but overall we try to make sure that the top, from the third on to the fourth,
Getting plenty of sunlight.
Get plenty of sunlight,
Got
spacing
it.
so the plants grow thicker if we're farming sun-grown.
Yeah, that's learn something every day.
Yep.
Tell us about the mineral. You've got up to two different soils in
Yep.
different fields. I found that different minerals, part of the flavor that I enjoy in part is because of the minerals that are in those soils. Is there a particular mineral focus that you look for or that you find in your fields?
Well, we do soil testing with our soils, depending, and so we'll look at our soil testing, and based on that, we'll look at the fertilization that we're going to utilize for that particular field, the fumigation that we're going to do for funguses, things of that nature that could create disease that could rot. In reality, with what we're growing in Jalapa as an example, outside of other countries, is the rich mineral soil that has there. So you'll have a little bit of alkaline, salt, and based on that, because of previous farming that they've done in those fields, maybe they've done corn in the past, soybeans or beans, that sometimes transfers over. We try to limit that. So based on that, we try to more focus not as much on the mineral soil, it's more natural that you'll find, consistent with the soil that's there in that particular valley. Then we focus more on the fertilization part of it.
So that's a good point. Do you guys rotate crops at all?
We do. We rotate crops. So we'll farm in a field. As an example, one of our farms is near the border between Honduras and Nicaragua, and what we'll do is it's about 100 acres, and we'll farm 50 on the front end, and then leave the 50 for the next year.
Oh,
So
I
we'll
see.
rotate.
Okay.
So we'll go back and forth. We'll farm only one cycle per season. So you'll see that we'll farm between October to all the way up to June.
Okay. So you mentioned Criollo, Corojo,
And Habano.
and Habano. So do you grow both of those in both Nicaragua and Honduras?
So currently, a lot of people's misconception, our factory's in Honduras, but our farms are in Nicaragua currently. So we've never really grown
gotcha.
in Honduras,
Okay.
but that's fine. That's, because people think because we're Honduran cigar, our tobacco technically has to come from Honduras, but we don't. But we are now. There's an issue with labor in Nicaragua. People are leaving the country. It's getting harder. Next generations don't want to work in the fields. So we're exploring now. We have about a 400-acre farm in Honduras, and we have about 100 acres that we could actually farm. It's more of a cattle ranch that we have, but we have the conditions, the river, and everything to be able to utilize that. That being said, for the most, wait, what was the original?
Just you grow those three. I was asking if you were growing them in both, but maybe the bigger question is, what are the really kind of the flavor profiles of those three? Because we see Criollo, we see Corojo, we see that. But what are if you're thinking about it from a chef, which one's salt, which one's pepper, which one's spice? What is the characteristics of that of those leaves?
Sure. So what you'll find, here's the thing, a lot of people don't realize, but Habanos, Corojo, and Criollo are very close. Essentially, you're almost talking about the same seed, even though there's been genetically modified Habanos from a 98 to 99. There's new Corojos out there, like the Corojo 2012, I believe.
2012, yeah.
The 2012.
Yeah.
So we just started doing a project in Colombia where I'm farming the 2012. That's one that doesn't actually give out seeds at the end, but it was genetically modified in Dominican Republic. But that being said, the Criollo was one of the more original seeds to come out of Cuba to go into Central America. It's a broader leaf, more rounded at the front. It's a little thinner depending if you're using it for filler or wrapper or binder. If you're using it for binder, it's a great leaf because it has a lot of aroma. It's really, it grows well condition-wise in Central America over the generations. So it has nice mellow characteristics, very creamy. You'll find the same in the Habanos with a little bit more strength depending on the cut of the plant. And then your Corojos, what we're farming is more for a thicker leaf, more sun-grown, that gives you that robustness, that full body. But even so, because of the conditions of the valley that we're in Jalapa, we're almost at 5,000 feet. You find that it's a very creamy aromatic tobacco regardless of the seed. That's really one of the things that's really, if you look at the different valleys between Condega in Nicaragua to Esteli to Jalapa, more aromatic, you get a little bit more rounded with fuller body in milder tobaccos in Jalapa. In Condega, the tobaccos are richer, more mineral. They're down by the river, so everything gets washed down there. So they're more spicier sometimes you see, whereas tobaccos from Esteli are more robust, fuller, richer. So you'll see that a lot of manufacturers will utilize in some of their blends with like Esteli because they're pushing for that stronger, more robust. I'm more of a medium body cigar manufacturer where I focus more on flavor, complexity in my blends with a little bit of strength, but if you see any of my blends, I try to focus more on nuances, depth of flavor, and that's what I try to look for.
Yeah. Anybody have any questions at this point, Mark? Hold on just a second, Dustin.
What is growing seasons? Are you doing one or two growing seasons?
We're doing one, so the growing season, like I said earlier, we start prepping around September, and then our seedlings will go into the nursery around October. They'll come out into the field 45 days. They'll stay on the field between 60 to 75 days. By that time, we start doing our cuts. Traditionally, we'll do our first cut 7 days later. Depending, you got to source labor. There's competition. So depending 7 to 10 days, we'll do our second cut, third cut, fourth cut. But to answer the second part, we only do one cycle. There are people that if you're able to get in there fast enough and you get the tobacco, especially with filler, you could actually do 2 cycles within one plot of land. But that's if you're coming in and out. But by the time if you're running into June and July, the rain season's coming, that second round might be affected. Your yield won't be as much, but you already have the labor, so it might be cheaper for you to be able to farm a second crop on that. We don't do it, but you can't do it.
You got a second question, Mark?
Yeah, just because I have to see it, is there, on your Lajeros, if you're focused on Lajero leaves, are you using the windscreens also for racing leaves and stuff like that?
Windscreens? No, we don't use any windscreens. I don't know what that would be. I would have to see them. I'm sorry. But for what our farming, we do either the shade grown, which protects, of course, yields a thicker leaf, or we'll do the sun grown, but not anything of that.
Is 100% of your tobacco coming from your fields, or are you getting some from other fields?
No, so we grow about 75% of the tobaccos that we use in our blends. Connecticut from Ecuador, we don't grow. We're currently started growing a couple years back the Maduro in Jalapa, which you'll find in our Maduro. Mm-hmm. So our Maduro has this San Andreas seed grown in Nicaragua. But I don't we utilize some Habanos from Ecuador as well because the wrapper is a very rich wrapper, and then the Ecuadorian is what we focus on.
Excellent. Dustin, you had a question.
My question is a little bit more of a personal question. So yes, longevity and tradition is nice. Being a third and fourth generation blender, how has your palate been similar or different from your father or grandfather's? And has that played factor in how you make your blends?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, overall, I think my father with his original blends, which are the Connecticut, our portfolio goes into 3 parts now. It goes into our core brands, which were the blends that my father started. You'll find that in our Connecticut, our Habano, our Corojo, and our Corojo Maduro. But then anything more of our premium lines, the Black Dahlia, La Conquista, the blue and green, the new 20th. I've had a little bit more exposure with my travels and smoking other people's cigars. So that being said, it's allowed me to kind of see where the market's going. And based on that, I kind of adapted myself in order to be able to what the market is asking for, and at the same time what I like to smoke. So to answer that question, yes, definitely very different. They used to do more traditional, milder smokes back in the day, not as strong, not as robust, but always they did focus on flavor and complexity, but overall not as much as you'll find now. But at the same time, I still go back to test a blend with my father, and what do you think? What do you think we should do? And then he'll give me some insight on it, because it's one of the things that, you look at tobaccos and blending in a different perspective. Everybody does. So it yields opinions for you to change. So.
Is
So-
the 20th anniversary your primary blend?
Yes.
Your father's primary blend?
No, it's well, this was developed about 3 years ago when the original blend. The cigars are about 2 years old with the 20th anniversary. But that was probably, it's going to be, I think overall, probably my 10th blend in the market. So this is a culmination of, developing from the Zulu Zulu, which was my original blend, which was my first blend, and it was my personal blend for a lot of years. And then I went on to do the La Conquista, the Black Dahlia, and it just evolved from there. So every one of those blends, sort of, you pick a little bit of what you want in a cigar, depending on the tobaccos that you're going to utilize, and based on that, I think it's a great blend. Has a lot of complexity, it's very richness, and it shares a lot of the things that I was looking for in a particular blend.
So one of the things we were talking about last night was just exactly how much Marlboro do you use on the Maduros number 5. These things literally look like they've been dipped in Maduro or in Armorol. But this is the quintessential cigar that we tell people that don't let a dark wrapper scare you. This is a don't judge a book by the cover type of cigar, because it is, while it looks dark, and a lot of people that are getting into cigars have a tendency to lean on the lighter side of the fence, this cigar is incredibly smooth. It has a very slow combustion rate, but it is just an absolutely beautiful cigar. So maybe talk a little bit about this particular cigar.
Sure. So this cigar utilizes Costa Rican, Nicaraguan fillers, a little bit of Colombian filler in there as well. We are Colombian. I was born in Colombia. We're Colombian farmers, so we grow tobacco in Colombia. So based on that, this is also, and I'll give you the components and tell you more about it afterwards. So the components are Nicaraguan, Costa Rican, and Colombian fillers with Nicaraguan binder. What makes this unique and different from my regular Corojo number 5 that a lot of people have smoked over the years is that it's actually utilizing a San Andreas seed from Mexico, but grown in Nicaragua. So based on that, it's a richer, thicker leaf that allows you to age it longer and give those oils, the ability to come out, makes it really rich, oily. The tobacco is medium to full, starts out mellow. I like to say is a little bit of a dark chocolate flavor, and then it just becomes a little spicier and peppery, which I think, I enjoy that as the blend develops.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the last box for sale.
Okay, I'll take it. Let's talk about some of the cigars in the line. You mentioned the Zulu Zulu. It didn't take long for this to become one of the shop favorites, and you can thank my son Brandon for that, because if I ever walked by the counter and somebody had a Zulu Zulu on the counter, I would just say, "Oh, you talk to Brandon," because it's his favorite cigar. Then he stopped talking about it because he realized everybody was buying it, and then he couldn't get any. Selfish little bastard. So now, what we have found, particularly with the Connecticut, is for somebody that thinks that Connecticut means mild, it means no depth, it means no complexity, just smoke that, and it will change your mind. But let's talk a little bit about that. You said it was your personal blend.
Yes.
And it's just an incredible cigar. So why don't you tell us a little bit about Zulu Zulu?
Sure. So you guys might be asking about the Zulu with the Connecticut. It's a medium body Connecticut, mild to medium. It's using Ecuadorian, Connecticut, Nicaraguan fillers, a little bit of Colombian in there. This cigar, to me, is quintessentially what you could smoke all day long. It's a cigar that doesn't really kind of give you that punch in the face. It's just nice and mellow, creamy. I don't even know how to describe it, but it's just a really nice, clean finish to the palate. So based on that, it's my first blend. I was very excited, being in my 20s to develop a blend and having the ability to share it. It was, as your first project, like anyone, it's your baby, right? It's just a nice project that I tie in with some really unique artwork. It's part of my SDK line. And it just
What is it? Talk about
so
SDK.
yeah, SDK stands for Stay True Kid. I'm sorry. And so what that means is just kind of being level-headed, understand what you're doing, what your focus is, and not for your head to get too big when you're doing something like this, right? So overall, we always tie it into a charity. At the beginning of the project when it was released, the person that did the artwork on this band was very unique because it was actually, he was adopted from an orphanage in Colombia, and we were able to get back to that orphanage with the cigar. But that being said, I think it's a cigar that just really overall has a real balance to it that you could smoke all day for Connecticut. I think it's really good.
Excellent.
Oh, sorry.
So, and while we're talking about the Zulu, one of the things that I was really excited about is the fact that you do a Lancero. We sell a lot of the Lanceros here. We sell a lot of smaller ring gauge cigars here. And so tell us from maybe in an order that you enjoy cigars, what is your Vitolas of choice?
Sure. Well, for me, as a cigar smoker, I really am more of a smaller ring gauge. And the reason for that is because I found that with a really good roll cigar that's small ring gauge, you get a little bit more balance. So I blend in a 46 by Corona Gordo. So all my blends, if you really want to taste them to what the original version of what I blend, the Corona Gordo is the way to go. The Lancero for me gives you that flavor. It's a really elegant cigar. It's a cigar that has to be made well. Not everybody can make a Lancero, even though you're a cigar roller. It takes time and effort for you to understand. Because anybody that makes a cigar can make a Lancero, but eventually can it draw? And that's where the knowledge of making a cigar. I like smaller ring gauges. I like 38s. This is a 40. I wanted to make it a little bit bigger. 42s, 44s, and 46s is where I stick to. And the reason I say that is because I'm one that likes to think that the wrapper imparts flavor, the binder imparts flavor, and the filler imparts flavor. But when you get into the bigger ring gauges, the difference between a wrapper and binder size from a 46 to a 54 is not much different, except for more leaves in the filler. So it kind of throws the blend off a little bit more. So my job as a blender is to make sure that we make a cigar that tastes from the original size, the smaller ring gauges that I blend, all the way to a 60. But overall, there's more air that comes in, so it might change, it might affect the blend. So I'm a big proponent of smoking smaller ring gauges because it's more balanced. You get a 30-30-30. When I say that, you get 30% of the flavor from the fillers, 30% of the flavor from the binder, and 30% of the flavor from the wrapper. The old school guys, when I got into it, would always tell you that the flavor only comes from the wrapper. And that was what they would tell you. Oh, no, the filler doesn't impart anything. But I do agree with, at this point in time over the years, because they were used to blending mild cigars. So if you put mild fillers, you would essentially get, with a nice rich wrapper, of course you're going to get more flavor of that from the wrapper. But as the years evolved, the blends became more complex. More countries were part of blends. You'll get, a balanced cigar sort of gives you flavor from all three parts of it, not just one.
One of the cigars, I'm not shy, I'll name brands, but there are three brands I don't sell that are very popular in this market, which is Fuente, Rocky Patel, and Perdomo. I don't sell them, I won't sell them, I have my reasons. But when we have people that come in that are just entering their cigar journey, and they tell us that they smoke maybe a Rocky or whatever the case may be, the one cigar that I always feel safe not knowing the strength level that they jump into, what end of the pool they jump into, that I can put them into is the blue and green. So tell us a little bit about the blue and green and what your thought was as you went through that blending process.
Sure. So here again we have another Connecticut. Now you guys might think, oh, he only likes Connecticut's. I happen to think that overall this cigar, it's more geared towards what's in the filler. I wanted to utilize Connecticut, but at the same time with the tobaccos inside, they were more mellower, but at the same time I put some ligeros in there to try to make it a spicier Connecticut. So that was my goal originally. It's like, this is probably about 4 or 5 years old now. So there was not a lot of Connecticut's that were medium to full body. All the Connecticut's that you find out there, even with the Zulu, they're more medium to mild. And I wanted to sort of focus on a medium to full, even though it would be very hard with the wrapper that I was utilizing. So that being said, more of a stronger flavor, a little bit more spice to a Connecticut, but at the same time more balance in my approach. I didn't want to take it too strong where it overwhelmed because it's a lighter wrapper, and you have to take that into consideration when you're blending a cigar. So it's a cigar that I think overall, and I like to smoke the Corona Gordo, which is the original blend where I blended it to. But it's a cigar that I could smoke all day. It's a cigar that I could smoke in the morning, in the afternoon, and in the nighttime. And if you smoke a cigar that's heavier, and I did this yesterday, I smoked about 4 cigars during the day. They were much stronger. I came back and I sat down here last night and I smoked this, and it really kind of, I tasted it. My palate accepted it in a sense, and I really got to see that richness, the sweetness that comes from the Nicaraguan. It's just a really nice mellow blend. I recommend it. Corona Gordo is one of my favorites.
So for the guy that says he wants something a little spicy, wants something with some punch, wants something that's going to really entertain particularly the sides of your palate, that is the Black Dahlia. And I'll have you talk a little bit about that. But I'm curious what you're doing with this cigar that, I mean, some of these you talk about how it will deliver some spice. This one just gives you a kind of a black pepper ride throughout the cigar. So tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So I'm a huge fan of using tobaccos from different countries. I think overall puros are great. You can make a great puro. That means, a cigar that's made 100% from one country. But then you could get technical with a puro where you could get different valleys, Jalapa, Condega, and then create some spectacular cigars. What I wanted to do with this is actually do a triple ligero. And that's where you get that spice. So it has three ligeros in there, but what makes it unique is that not every ligero is made the same way. So I'm using Colombian ligero, I'm using Nicaraguan ligero, and Costa Rican ligero. So you'll find that the ligero from Colombia, you would consider it a seco if you were from Jalapa, because it's a lot thinner, but it has a lot more strength. The Costa Rican has a sweetness, yet a little bit of a twang that I like, that just imparts, and then the balance and the spice and pepper that comes from a ligero from Nicaragua. So it's a well-balanced cigar in my opinion. With the final product, I really kind of wanted to utilize 3 different ligeros, even though they're not all ligeros if you look at the traditional way of looking at a ligero. But they just burn well together, and they give you that sort of boldness and richness and peppery that you're finding. So it builds up as you smoke it. Excellent.
So now in the line, I'm going to save your newest for last.
All right.
But last year at the trade show, we were shown the 20th anniversario. And the program was explained to us that there was going to be a select number of dealers that were chosen for this cigar. We were one of them. Thank you. And there was this program where you would get basically 5 boxes per quarter, la-di-da-di-da, right? The cigar comes in November. What are you doing? You're killing me, Ron.
I'm sorry.
I don't even like hearing my voice on that. Okay. So the cigar comes in, And of course, we already had a base of people that had already experienced Gran Habano. They loved the Gran Habano for everything that it was. But this cigar, as you guys know, we have a top shelf line of cigars. We do really, really well with Atabey and Toro and some other cigars. And now all of a sudden we have a cigar that's sub $20 that sits on that same shelf. And it became obvious. And from November and December, it quickly became, it was our number 2 cigar in our top 25 at the end of the year, and we only had it for a month and a half. My first panicked text to George was, holy shit, man, we're gonna need more of these, like a lot more. And we're very, very blessed to be able to get a really good flow of this particular product. It is the reason that right now today, and most manufacturers that come in to try to sell or do sell us, strive to get inside of our top 10, because they know once you get in our top 10, that's where the volume is at. These guys are now number 2 in unit sales, and it's because of this cigar. So tell us a little bit about, tell us a lot about this cigar, and maybe we'll explain why, other than just phenomenal taste, why this thing is just literally flying off the shelves.
Thank you. Well, you know, with the fact that we wanted to celebrate our 20th year, you know, it's something, it's an achievement for any family business. Not only the 5th year or the 10th year, but 15th or the 20th for our brand being out in the market. It was something that I really wanted to celebrate, and I wanted to focus on doing a blend that sort of signified that particular achievement. So I blend in a form that maybe a lot of people do and don't. It's a more traditional Cuban style blending. When I say that is I take the approach of filler, binder. The filler I utilize always Ligero, Viso, and Seco. And based on that, that gives it the balance. How much Ligero you utilize in your blend, how much Seco for burn, for aroma, and then for flavor and strength and aroma, the Viso is the best. I mean, if you want filet mignon, everyone tells you Ligero, Ligero, Ligero. It's actually Viso, Viso, Viso. That's one of the things that people sometimes don't realize, especially with Nicaraguan tobacco, is that it gives you the flavor, the complexity, the aroma, the strength, and then that you could kind of add a little bit of Ligero. And this is something that's very, 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 very much in that direction of a traditional Cuban style cigar utilizing Nicaraguan, Central American tobaccos, and then some of the aromas that you get from, because I wanted to try something different in Peruvian. For a lot of guys out there that don't know what Peruvian is Pelo de Oro, and it's an original seed from Cuba, grown in Ecuador, and that really is as close as possible for us in our industry to get to Cuban tobacco. And that's what I think, in my opinion, adds a lot of that richness to the blend and the aroma. So it's a well-balanced cigar. It's more in the medium body. It doesn't creep up to the full body, but it's just a really nice, rich, traditional, as close as possible, in my opinion, of what I try to get to an old Cuban cigar. And that's what that is.
Excellent. Well, that explains a lot because, as you guys know, Atabey and Byron Bandolero uses Peruvian throughout their line. Nelson has talked about how difficult it is to blend with Peruvian, but it adds this brightness, this acidity to that finish, this floral element to that cigar that just puts it on a whole nother level. So that kind of, I think it's what kind of cracks the code on creating a Cuban-esque cigar. I think it is the proper use of Peruvian. So hats off on that cigar. Please keep them flowing to us. We love it. Now this cigar, and I think you have an artist here. You have a craftsman. You have a 4-star chef or a Michelin chef that is dealing with all of these components and basically trying to put together a meal for us that we're going to sit down and enjoy for a couple hours. But you have to appreciate an artist that says, I want to sit down with other artists. I want to sit down with other manufacturers. I want to play in their sandbox, and I want to learn from them. And that, to me, is a tribute that he's not done learning, and he has taken on a new project. I'll let you tell us where, who, and how and when. and then maybe talk about if that is going to continue to be part of your future endeavors.
Sure. So my approach after many years of blending and making cigars in my factory, I realized that there's more to learn. That I could sit down and just continue to do what I do in my own kitchen as a chef. But as a blender, I realized that everybody's different. That what guys are doing with Arabay as an example, with Illusion Tatuaje, a lot of the other companies, my father, these guys have a different approach to what we're doing, even though it's the same final product. And I want to learn. So what I wanted to do with the El Enemigo that came out is I wanted to go as far away from Central America as possible when I went to Dominican Republic. And I spoke to the people at Davidoff and to work at their Tabadon factory in Dominican Republic. And I wanted to utilize my blending techniques with their tobacco. One of the things that as a manufacturer, sometimes you get too comfortable making cigars with your own tobaccos. You focus as a farmer that, we're going to grow 100 acres of this, 50 acres of this, and that's going to go to our production, and we're going to sell 2 million sticks next year, and then you could just stay comfortable doing that. But for me, it's more of an approach of learning, to continue to learn from people, to continue to learn of what I'm doing right and seeing what I'm doing wrong. And so that was the approach. They have some very unique tobacco that I always enjoy from their cigars, and I wanted to utilize that, but I always felt that, if I could blend with their tobaccos and make my own cigar, and that was the approach with the El Enemigo. It's our first Dominican cigar from our company. It's made by them, but distributed by us, and I just think it's a cigar that overall has a little bit of spice and pepper. It is a little bit floral, but it has a very dry, rich finish that you can see in the cigar. And so if you get a chance to try it, tell me what you think about it, because it was actually pre-release last month. So you guys are actually one of 32 stores that have it nationwide. The full release is going to be later on next month, at the beginning of June. So you guys have the ability to actually tell me what you think, because one of the things as a cigar maker, you always strive to make people happy, that the outcome is going to be received. Of course, I failed with some projects. They were not well received, but I think that's one of the things that you learn from, and you change things around, right? But overall, I think when we finally put a product out there, we always strive to make sure that people are happy with the final outcome. So let me know what you think about it, but I think it's a great cigar. It's totally different from Gran Habanos, because we're using tobaccos from Dominican Republic, even though there is some Nicaraguan in there, but we're using a lot of Dominican tobacco in the blend.
So two things I want to point out. Number one, you mentioned drying, but there is something that particularly with Nicaraguan tobacco, it causes you to salivate. There are some Dominican cigars that literally just dry your palate out. I'm personally not a fan. Some people like that. I'm not a fan. But this cigar doesn't really do that. Maybe the Nicaraguan that's in there is kind of allowing you still to create that saliva. So that to me is an important part of the experience. The other thing that I want to point out is, who all here has tasted a Davidoff? Do you remember which one tastes different than the other one? No, they all taste the same. And I think that there's nothing wrong with that, right? If it's good, do it. But what it shows is that in the hand, when you put the same tobacco that they use in the hands of somebody else, they can make that cigar taste completely different than anything that's coming out of that factory. And to me, when I smoke that, I'm sitting here thinking I'm going to smoke a white label Davidoff. It's not. It has so much more complexity. It has so much more flavor, depth. It'll push you up against maybe the medium plus side of the fence a little bit, but it is a beautiful cigar. And the thing I also want to hand to you, we're big on attention to detail. You got to see the box. I mean, it has this like a velvet velour kind of thing going on all the way around. The inside of the box, everything. You really paid attention to detail on your boxes and your packaging. Yeah, Ron.
Two things real quick. First off, how many collaborations with Davidoff and produced great cigars that don't taste anything like Davidoff's, using the same tobacco, which to me tells me they're not utilizing tobacco the way that they could.
Well, I mean, it's just, you get a recipe and you stick with it, and it works for them, right? I mean, it's worked for the quarter pounder with cheese. So, it's basically, that's what they've done for a long, long time. So, yeah, I don't know how many other projects they collaborate. Do you know?
No, I'm not aware of that.
I'm not really aware of it.
And the other question is, when you're talking about collaborating with other blenders and other farms and stuff like that, have you got a favorite story of you were working with somebody and having a great time, or something funny happened, or you just had an aha moment and something that just pops out every time you want to tell a story? That's the story you tell.
Well, right off the top of my mind, I can't remember right now. But that being said, there's always in the back of my mind when I'm smoking with someone that's a cigar maker, we're always interchanging ideas and stories, and there's things that you can learn from them. And then based on that, I do go back and sort of think of, if we're talking about tobaccos or how that's burning or this and that, their approach of how they cure tobacco. I go back to my factory and I try different approaches as well. So can't really say off the top of my head that aha moment maybe, but I've had a
conversation you had with somebody, or
well, I mean, there's a lot of funny conversations over the years, things that happen in the industry, because there is a brotherhood with all the manufacturers. We all know each other, years of being together. Probably the funniest story for me would be that I was in Denver, if you want to hear a story, and we were doing the Rocky Mountain Cigar Festival, and at the end of the festival, we decided all to go to a strip club. And since a lot of people say that I look like Pitbull, Juani from Gurkha decided that we were going to play the I'm Pitbull, don't say anything, sit in the corner and try to get free drinks. And so he would talk for me, and I was a Pitbull from Miami, and it worked out for a little bit, and then it didn't work. So there's your funny story there.
Who's the Irish UFC super famous fighter that looks exactly like Ryan?
Gregor McGregor.
McGregor. So we always go in and we try to get tell people that Ryan, one of our members, is Conor McGregor, and we really only do it to see if somebody will kick his ass. But it hasn't happened yet. So we're really trying to get somebody to come in and go, come on, tough guy, let's do this. So and we're just doing that just to watch Ryan get his ass beat. Anyway, you had a question.
Yeah, so as the blender, when you're blending out, is there a specific pairing that your cigars go good with? Like a lot of cigars taste way better with wine, a lot of cigars taste way better with coffee. Is there a target for your blends?
So technically, yes, I do. I mean, as an example, typically my milder blends, I try to pair, because I'm thinking of smoking a milder cigar during the morning with coffee. So I usually gear towards that, where I make that, or maybe a lighter spirit. Some mild cigars taste great with tequila. But for the most part, I look at two spirits that I really focus on: Scotch, of course, and wine. I'm a big red wine drinker. I love California wines, some of the French wines. I just started getting into the Argentinians, Malbecs, and things of that. So I look for a rich, robust blend with even my medium, because you want it to balance off with your medium to full body with a rich red wine. I try to do that, but also a nice mellow Scotch. Cognac to a degree I love too. It's a little bit sweeter, so I like that. I don't like very spicy, peppery drinks myself, so I like something nice and mellow that pairs well. So there's no wrong spirit out there as long as you enjoy it, but there's some that do pair better with mine. So I've gotten into bourbons the last 10 years, and a lot of the bourbons with some of the ryes that I like pair well with some of the blends that you see here. They're more the mediums, like the Black Dahlia has a little bit of pepper and spice, and then you get a nice little rye. They kind of balance off, so you don't get that harsh burn with the rye. So I do stick to a little darker spirits, but I usually go more for like a Scotch and some more red wine. Yeah.
Any other questions? No? Are you going to stick around?
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, we're going to go ahead and end this part of it right now. I'm going to put my sales hat on for a second. There are deals that are going on with Gran Habano. Buy 4, get 1 free. Buy 10, get 3. Buy 20, get 6. There's some ashtrays. There's some other goodies out there. And we'll be sure to make sure you get taken care of on that. George will stick around. So for those of you that are shy, like Rhonda, and if you have any questions at all, come on up, sit down, have a little cigar, have some fun. George, thank you very much for doing this. We appreciate
Thank you guys. I really appreciate
Really
it. Thank you.
coming in.
Thanks, once we get there. It's great.
That was awesome.